testifying on behalf of the other panelists?
Yes, ma'am. One opening statement for the three of us.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Chairwoman Hirono, Ranking Member Kramer, distinguished members of the subcommittee, on behalf of myself, Vice Admiral Khan, Lieutenant General Heckel, we thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to address the Department of Navy's FY23 budget request for our sea power capabilities. We would like to thank your subcommittee for your leadership and support of shipbuilding, naval aviation, and ground programs that maintain maritime superiority in defense of our nation. I'd like to highlight this past year we've had a number of significant firsts as we provide new capabilities to the fleet. This year we achieved the initial operational capability, or IOC, of the USS Gerald Ford, and that ship is now, first of her class, is preparing for first deployment later this year. We completed the operational testing of the CH-53K heavy lift helicopter, and just recently, just a couple days ago, we declared IOC of that capability. We have been equipping our first platoons of Marines with the new amphibious combat vehicles this year, and we expect later this year to do the first deployment of this vehicle later this year. We achieved IOC of the VH-92, the presidential helicopter, and we are now starting the commissioning process with the White House to get that helicopter into the White House's fleet. We've also accomplished the first refueling of an operational aircraft with an unmanned air vehicle. In this case, it was the MQ-25 prototype aircraft, and we refueled both an F-18, an E-2D, and a Joint Strike Fighter. Of note on the Joint Strike Fighter, this year we had our first deployment of F-35 Charlies, both the Marine Corps and the Navy deployed for the first time, and then a true measure of interoperability with our partners in the Royal Navy. This past year saw the deployment of a squadron of Marine F-35 Bravos on the HMS Queen Elizabeth. The Department of Navy's FY23 budget is guided by SECNAV's priorities to strengthen our maritime superiority in defense of our nation, to empower our people, and to strengthen strategic partnerships. It implements the Chief of Naval Operations Navigation Plan to expand our fleet capabilities for distributed operations, while building on the Commandant of the Marine Corps' Force Design 2030 to rapidly modernize the expeditionary posture of the Marine Corps. Consistent with recent budgets, this budget prioritizes the Navy's contribution to the national strategic deterrence while balancing readiness for the fight tonight, new capabilities for the future fight, and capacity across the near and future. The FY22 budget continues our investments in more lethal network capabilities integrated into the joint force to address our pacing and acute threats. As reflected in the Department's 30-year shipbuilding plan, this budget requests over $27 billion for shipbuilding programs, more than $5 billion more than was requested in last year's President's budget, and includes 51 new construction ships across the 23 to 27 FYDP. This budget also invests in 96 fixed-wing aircraft, rotary-wing aircraft, and unmanned aircraft in FY23, with 420 aircraft across the FYDP. The budget includes funding for Marine Corps force design priorities for equipment modernization and precision fires, resilient communications, and mobility platforms to optimize the force for naval expeditionary warfare in a maritime littoral. To ensure we can maintain the forces we have, we are expanded in our budget the aviation and ship depot funding lines. We also are continuing the OPN funding maintenance pilot, and we're expanding it to the Atlantic Fleet and the Pacific Fleet. The budget continues, Senator Hirono, to your point, once-in-a-century recapitalization of our national ship infrastructure as part of the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, SIOP, with a significant increase in funding in 23 that is sustained, our commitment is sustained across the FYDP. On the aviation side, the budget funds repairs, overhauls, inspections of our airframes, engines, and aircraft components, and it continues our reform efforts to reduce out-of-reporting aircraft and increase the number of mission-capable aircraft we have. With a focus on developing our fully capable future naval forces, this budget invests a record $24 billion in research and development. It includes investments in our next generation submarine, our large surface combatant, our air dominance aircraft, as well as investments in hypersonic weapons, directed energy weapons, autonomy, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the initial instantiation of Project Overmatch. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before your subcommittee today and for the strong support this subcommittee has always provided to our sailors and our Marines. And now we look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Secretary, in my opening statement, I referred to the fact that you are responsible for acquisition and sustainment matters to include maintenance and the importance of our maintenance availabilities in both the private and public shipyards. And what have you done since the last year to improve the performance of ship maintenance programs and to keep individual overhauls from being late?
Yes, ma'am. So we've taken a multiple pronged approach. We've started with the planning phase, and we are putting more resources into planning up front for an availability, getting the work packages defined, getting the long lead material bought sooner in the process than we have in the past. In the contracting phase, we've moved to what we call A-120, where we try to award the contracts. I'm talking about our private shipyards now. 120 days before the availability to give the contractor a chance to get up to speed and understand the work before we get into the actual the project. And then we have really done a focused effort, what we call a plan to perform, of what are the key criteria for the success of an availability, and then make sure we understand the levers that we would pull in order to be able to succeed, right? What are the key things, and make sure we are focusing on the most important data to be able to affect the availability once it's started. Except for the contracting part, ma'am, we are doing the same type of items on the public shipyards as well, looking at the availability of equipment up front at the public shipyards, and then doing that plan to perform process where we're really pulling the thread hard on processes within those shipyards.
So, Mr. Secretary, as with the shipbuilding side, on the maintenance side and repair side, you're probably seeing issues of workers, not enough trained workers, and the supply chain issues. So what specifically are you doing to address those particular problems?
Yes, ma'am.
On the shipyard, the repair side?
Yes, on the repair side, yes, we are seeing both supply chain delays due to COVID impacts, as well as workforce where we are not having the workforce that we need up here, and it's happening in new construction as well. So your point is very valid. We are working with the shipyard, regional shipyard associations on pipelines for future workforce to try to get skilled workers from out of the colleges and the trade schools into the trade. That's a longer term thing. It's not happening immediately, but we're seeing younger folks coming into the business through the trade schools we've set up. For the actual work, we actually are, I'll say, illuminating. We have tools to illuminate where our supply chain is really having trouble and trying to attack that in advance, ma'am.
So I think that the lack of trained workers has been an issue long before COVID. It's been exacerbated by COVID. So I hope that you are doing something to turbocharge the focus on recruiting and retention, shipyard workers, both on the shipbuilding side as well as on the repair side. I don't have the answers to the lack of workers, but it is a major concern ongoing. So you're going to get asked those questions every time you come before either SASC or this subcommittee. Now, regarding there's going to be a gap in the number of America-class LHAs, the amphibious ships. And so my information is after the fourth total of the 11 originally planned is finished in 2023, then you're not going to get any more of these LHAs for another 8 years or so. And was that a budget decision? And if so, what happens when you need to resume production or construction of these LHAs, and then the shipyard is going to have to ramp up. What happens regarding the construction of these ships at that point with that kind of a long gap?
Yes, ma'am. Quickly, on the last one, for workforce, we do have funding in the 23 budget to actually go and try to accelerate those workforce development programs. I just want to finish that last question. With this question, ma'am, yes, the ship, LHA-type ships, about 5 years apart. We call it 5-year centers. So the previous ship is in 23. The next ship, most efficiently, would be built in 28. It is affordability reason of why it's not in it as a 28 ship. It's just in the overall budget why it's sitting out there in 31. But we will relook that in the coming budget cycle, ma'am.
I would ask that you do that. So I have a lot of other questions, and I'll probably do a second round, but I'll turn to Senator Kramer.
Thanks, Chairwoman. And since you've primed the pump so nicely on shipbuilding and